Hello everyone, thanks for joining us on this edition of The Insight. I am Badly Jonathan. In this edition of the program, we're going to take a critical and in-depth look at the All-Anglophone Conference convened by some religious and civil society leaders to find a way out of the current socio-political and security impasse hitting the two Anglophone regions of the Republic of Cameroon for close to 3 years now. The crisis has been deepening, and Chirstian Cardinal TUMI, Archbishop Emeritus of the Douala Metropolitan Archdiocese of the Roman Catholic Church, took the initiative to invite some religious leaders, notably of the Presbyterian Church of Cameroon, as well as some Muslim leaders, the imams of the Bamenda and BOYA central mosques in the northwest and southwest regions of the country, respectively. We'll also continue with our series on the way out of the crisis. In some few seconds, meet our guest. Our guest in this edition of the program is a Muslim scholar in the Christian Bible, ABDULKARIM. Ali, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Mr. Babila.
Now, the Archbishop Emeritus of the Douala Metropolitan Archdiocese of the Roman Catholic Church is Eminence Chirstian Cardinal TUMI took the initiative to convene to call some religious leaders, including those of the Presbyterian Church in Cameroon and some Muslim leaders as well, to come together and organize a conference for all Anglophones to find a way out of this crisis. And lots of reactions have been streaming in from government, the civil society, and political actors. What's your take on this conference?
Well, let me begin by praising God and I ask Him to send His blessings upon His prophet and messengers and righteous people who have lived. I ask Him to send His blessings upon you, Babila, and myself and the audience of Equinoxe. Thanks for asking me that question. I would answer the question in light of a believer in the Bible, if I were a Christian, and most of all a believer in the Quran as a Muslim. We are told in the Quran in the 4th chapter that we have to follow God, His prophet, and then those in authorities. Those in authorities, especially the religious leaders. So imams were there. Therefore, I being a Muslim, unless the imams would go against the Quran and the teachings of the Prophet, I will find what they are doing wrong, without which I have no choice but to stand with them and journey alongside while rectifying mistakes if they arise. As for the Cardinal, this is a plausible and laudable and a positive move such a man would make. At his age, he has quite nothing to lose. Though we could now look at look at some intricacies in them, look at some textual criticism and see if some knots are not tying up. But what else would a man of God at his age do in such a thing but mediating to bring peace in a land that he calls his? And
how important is this All-Anglophone Conference at this juncture of the crisis, which has been deepening, people killed here and there, thousands who fled their homes in the bushes, in other parts of the country, in neighboring Nigeria, and things have continued deepening?
Well, it is as important to the extent of the truth of the objectives. What I mean is, we have had in 1993 and 94 respectively, AAC 1 and 2, and we were not taken seriously as Southern Cameroonians. Nothing in those resolutions have been implemented. On the contrary, some Southern Cameroonians used 94 precisely to betray others. We know Dr. Kasan Anyangwe today. Immediately after that, he's been on exile till date. So it is important for Southern Cameroonians to have their meeting and decide exactly what they want. That is to the extent of the objective. But if there are other external intentions, for all intents and purposes, those who carry those intentions have to explain better how important it is to them. But to me, it makes sense that at a point in time, because we have divided opinions, don't forget, being Southern Cameroonians, it is true, if you ask me openly and fairly, majority want a total restoration of their independence. That notwithstanding, we have people who still think that federation is a possibility, decentralization is a possibility, a union is a possibility. So it is very fair for the Cardinal to say, with these various thoughts, differential opinions, it's good to have an all-Anglophone conference to sit and really decide what we want if we have to talk to the government of the Republic.
And of course, the leaders to designate those who are going to stand to talk in the name of the Anglophones from the northwest and the southwest regions.
Absolutely, this is the objective, because once
there has been a question, if we want to dialogue, government has been asking the question, who are we going to dialogue, since the consortium was dissolved.
Now, this is a fallacious government. I mean, come on, this is pure hypocrisy. The government came to Bamenda and asked that they want to talk to people. People formed a consortium made up of Barrister Bala, Dr. Fontem, Barrister Boka, and many others. They spoke for them for 3 days, and on the 17th of January 2017, they started arresting them, and some fled out of the country. And now you're asking, who do you want to talk to? Well, if they really want to know who they want to talk to, Southern Cameroonians will tell them. And trust me, I'm sure, being an honest person as you are, if you called me here, is to be honest with things. The very people they hate so much and they don't want to talk to are the people they have to talk to. And I won't say who is that and who is not here, but allow for a fair, all-inclusive Southern Cameroonian conference, and Southern Cameroonians will tell you who their leader is. When I say all-inclusive, those in the diaspora should be allowed to come through amnesty. Those in the jails should come out. Those in the bushes should be given total amnesty to be able to freely express themselves. And then you will know who the leadership of Southern Cameroon is. Until then, I say the government is just playing ini, mini, mini, more. In Pidgin we call it tumbu, tumbu, boss, calabash. But we are far grown than that. Come on. We are not stupid. For them to ask us if they want to talk, who would they talk to?
And you're talking about some of the requirements, some of the issues demanded by the religious and civil society leaders for this conference to take place, notably general amnesty for those who are in jail, the Anglophone crisis, those who have been detained in connection to the Anglophone crisis, as well as those who have fled the country because of the crisis. But government says that it is unacceptable to ask a law-abiding country like Cameroon to liberate people who have committed crimes, who have killed. These are the words of the Minister of Communication, Issa Chiroma Bakari.
Well, Issa Chiroma Bakari to me has been a time bomb, and he will continue to be a time bomb. They keep using words without defining their terms, and sometimes if you don't define your terms, you think you have a strong argument, whereas you really have nothing to say. If you start by defining who a terrorist is, then you will know who the terrorist in this case is. If you start by defining who the oppressed is, and then you will know who the oppressor is. But I'm not sure they have defined these terms. When they keep saying that Cameroon is a state of law, no, Cameroon has broken several laws. You being a journalist, you know these things, I don't need to state them. Cameroon is out of way in terms of human rights observation. They don't observe the rights of humans, not in the least bit. They don't observe the right of their own state, not in the least bit, not even their constitution. They don't respect it. So nobody should come here and pretend as if they have a case. All right, well, the Cardinal made clear statements. He gave pre-suggestions as well as pre-conditions for an all-inclusive dialogue. Release all those in captivity, show some good faith. And the Cardinal was he was so weak and lame in putting that. He's not saying it as I'm saying it at all. He said those that the law has not found them guilty should be released, and a favorable condition for those in the bushes and in refugees camp to come back, and those abroad. He made it so weak. But what I for one would say is total release of everyone, because you need to ask, okay, let me accept for the sake of argument that we Southern Cameroonians are terrorists. I want to accept. We should be asking, what was the cause of our act of terrorism? Who started being a terrorist before someone responded? The facts are very clear. If we talk about Jesus Christ 2,000 years ago, Muhammad 1,400 years, is it Cameroon history that we don't know? Or is it the recent things that have happened 2 years ago that we cannot see clearly? Till this day, on broad daylight, a military guy in his uniform raped a breastfeeding mother of 17-year-old in the name of security. And we've not heard that. We've not heard anybody condemning that publicly. They keep playing games. He's in the look. This guy raped in Bamenda. Mancho BBC spoke about bad roads in Bamenda. He was flown to Yaoundé, and till this date he's in jail. This guy raped in Bamenda, and we're hearing that he's been tried in the Legion and in the military tribunal. Look, such a double standard. Who is the terrorist? And if you treat people like this, Do you think they don't have human life in them? They don't have fiber, they don't have marrow in their bones, that they will sit and watch you simply because you are at the head of the state? The state is made up of two people, the government and the people. Without the government, without the people, you don't have the government. But without the government, you still have the people. But this country that claims to be a law-abiding country doesn't have any respect, especially for the people of Southern Cameroon.
And those demands are problematic within the Yaoundé administration, notably asking that they should release the detainees of the Anglophone crisis, Ayuk Tabe, Sisiku, and all the rest who are in jail, Mancho, BBC, and all the others. This is where there is a problem, because government is saying, yes, the initiative is good, but this is unacceptable.
Well, it's unacceptable to them. When people cry about bad roads in Cameroon, it's unacceptable to the government. When people want books to be released on time, it is unacceptable to the government. When people want potable water, it is unacceptable to the government. So what is really acceptable to them? This man, Sisiku Ayuk Tabi, who is called a terrorist in this country, was attending diplomatic meetings with top leaders of the world who fight against terrorism. I've never seen America, England, or France, or Swiss sit alongside with terrorists like the so-called Bin Laden. But he was having meetings with them. Look, we have to be careful and we have to stop playing pranks. These are preconditions given by a man of God who has studied the case, who is as old as the government of this country. He's as old as the government of this country 56 years ago. He's as old as that, given his age today. He understands the polemics, the games. When he makes this call and then you ignore it, definitely you're ignoring the voice of the people, which is the voice of God. So now the burden of proof is on them. Cardinal is not forcing anyone, and Southern Cameroonians per se have not come and say, look, we need this meeting. The burden of proof and defense is on them. Since they think he doesn't have a good solution and he cannot propose anything, they should bring an alternative, or they should keep on fighting their war. But I'm telling them that war has not resolved any problems in this world.
Now, another bone of contention is the ceasefire. The call for a ceasefire. Government says those who are fighting for the independence of the former Southern Cameroons should lay down their arms first.
Good, good. So that is nice. Those who are fighting for the independence, for the restoration of the independence, good. That's a good term now. You're referring to them, or to us in general. Should lay their arms first. They didn't pick arms first. They didn't declare any war. The government declared it war and started killing their daughters, fathers, burning their parents before they picked up arms to defend themselves. They have not gone on any raid. They are not barbaric people. We are here, we are there. And if anyone thinks it's a lie, I call on someone like Chirima to come and rent a house in Mile 2, an apartment, and stay and observe. Who is the terrorist? Is it the military who are supposed to protect the citizens, or the denizens of these places? We have to stop all this. Yeah. Ceasefire. You cannot want to have a peace talk without dropping your arms. You have to drop arms. Cardinal said...
No, the question is, who should drop first?
Of course, who called the war? The government. Who called the war? The government. And so
you should start with the demilitarization of the two Anglophone regions.
Of course.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so you see what the military is doing. They're increasing more fuel in the fire. They are digging bigger holes to close a small one. They are raping people's children. They are torturing people. There is chaos. There is fear everywhere. Look, I challenge the government. I'm not saying ceasefire. There's a difference between ceasing fire and falling back in military terminologies. Fall back. Let's see if the people you call terrorists will go out harassing and killing people. Fall back, in other words, let's not have the military presence and see. Now let's give a test to really confirm if these guys are terrorists. Fall back, demilitarize the street, stop all the barbarism. Let's see if anyone will go out again with a gun. Let's see if we'll hear a gunshot in the air. This is a call of good faith, and the Cardinal put it always on both sides. Chiruma, what he said is, the Cardinal made a big mistake. How could he be comparing the state military with terrorists? You see, someone is trying to bring peace with soft language, and you simply cannot see where peace lies. The government doesn't want to give anything like justice or peace a chance.
But saying that the two parties should drop their weapons, is it not putting the two entities, I want to put it that way, the Cameroonian army and those who are fighting for the restoration of the independence of the former Southern Cameroon, is it not equating them?
But they are equal, because in the in 1961 federation, these were two equal states of equal status getting into a federation. After that, we don't have any union binding them. If you have a document, please show me. They are equal states. But so now, look, you have to look. Equal does not mean equity. It doesn't mean you're equivalent in number or stronger or lesser. We are saying that you have as equal right as this person.
Yes,
you have as equal right to defend yourself as much as
that's talking about Anglophone Cameroon and the other part of the Francophone parts of the country. But now, here we are referring to the military. Since the two entities were dissolved and they became one, there is only one military in Cameroon. And so the problem that the government is raising is equating that military of the nation with those who have constituted themselves into a military force and are fighting for a goal, which is the independence of the former Southern Cameroons.
When Peter Mafani Mosonge came to Bamenda, I was there present in that hall, and then I want to quote the chairman of SDF. He said, "Mr. Chairman," referring to Peter Mafani chairing that occasion, "if you have forgotten all the things I've said, remember this one. Go and tell Mr. Bia that if I were less than 50, if I weren't in my 70s, I'll pick guns and join those boys in the bushes." Verbatim, that's what he said. Why? Because they are defending themselves. Why? Because he's on the field, he sees the carnage, he sees the killing, he sees the maiming, and it's uncalled for. Look, again, we have to be clear with history. These are two states of equal status. And after that, there is no other union.
Now, if you were in the position to advise the government of this country, to advise the head of state on this all Anglophone conference, notably regarding those issues which the government says we can't grant this one, we cannot grant this one, but the initiative is good, what will you tell the government concerning the ceasefire, concerning the liberation of those who are being detained today?
I would tell the government through Chiroma Bakari. I would tell the government through Chiroma Bakari, because Chiroma Bakari happens to be a Muslim. I would tell him to tell the government the story of the Prophet Muhammad in Hudaybiyah. Prophet Muhammad had within his right to go and perform pilgrimage in Mecca. Then he was in Medina. At the outskirts of Mecca, in a place called Hudaybiyah, the pagans of Mecca stopped him from going to perform his rite. But then he had an army. His disciples said, "Look, we are within our rights and we have a strong force. Let's crush them." Prophet Muhammad said, "Cool down." They said, "Okay, get into an agreement with us, the pagans." What agreement? That this year you are not coming for the pilgrimage. And then if any pagan joins your camp as a Muslim, within this period of time we're going to have the agreement, return the pagans back to Mecca. But if a Muslim will come to Mecca and join the pagans, they have to stay there. Muhammad agreed. On the document of the contract, they said his name is Muhammad Rasulullah. It means Muhammad, the servant of God, or the prophet of God. The pagans say they don't recognize him as the prophet of God. He said, "Is that your problem?" They said, "Yes." He asked them, he asked his disciples, "Where are the words?" Because he was illiterate. "Where are the words Rasulullah?" They showed him. He took a pen and cancelled it. He said, "Is that okay?" He said, "Okay." Now, what happened? There has been war. We had had 3 wars after then. We had the Battle of Badr, Uhud, and the Trench. What happens in a time where people lay down their arms? The message of peace sings. There is room for dialogue between people who could not dialogue. In the period when Prophet Muhammad had this contract, many more pagans joined Islam than before. I'm saying that to say this. If Chiroma knows this story, he would know that the person who thinks is powerful, Muhammad was powerful, God was on his side. And the person who is within his right, who thinks he's within his right, is the person who calls the shot during crisis. You can't stop having your shoulders above your head and wanting to have good answers. This is his prophet. Within his right to go and perform pilgrimage, he signed an agreement that was totally against him and his people. But that is when victory came. I will advise him that, and I'll tell the government, if you want to solve this issue, everyone has said it, and the voices of people are the voice of God. If this nation knows God, for crying out loud, release everyone in your keeping. Create favorable conditions for refugees to come back and those in the beaches to come back. Sit down and talk with the people that matter. Demilitarize the zone and apologize above all. Say you're sorry. They have to come out and do this. The government has blundered from one thing to the other since this thing started, and they keep blundering with all this ego and pride, and that is stupidity.
And talking about the general amnesty for those who are in jail and those who have fled the country, there are reports that there is a government mission abroad in the United States, fishing out those who have been contributing in one way or the other in ideas in the independence struggle, to fish them out. It means that if they were to be granted general amnesty, probably when they return home they could be arrested as well.
No, if you grant amnesty, it goes with documentation, and that is binding. And talking about the Cameroon government sending envoys to go and talk to the American government to help them fish out people. Yeah, they are free to do that, but I'm confident that the Constitution of America, their amendments are not that of Cameroon. Americans are strong with your minds, not strong with your hearts. And the people who have been speaking about Southern Cameroons have not stopped speaking. They are there in the US. America does not need to fish them. America knows exactly where they are. America is not Africa where people live in a country and nobody can trace them. They know exactly where they are. And look, America knows the story of this country, and America of all knows independence.
But looking at what happened to the other separatists or the other pro-independence leaders, like Siku Ayutabe in Nigeria and so on, and then looking at the arrest of a Supreme Court magistrate, a senior Supreme Court advocate like Paul Abine, anything can happen. You can sign a document today and say, okay, we grant you general amnesty, come back, and then when they reach here,
well, you know, Sisiku was in the US, and then he was tricked to come back to Nigeria, and then he was arrested. That nonsense cannot happen in America. If you don't have extradition treaty with America, you cannot take anyone. We've seen it between Turkey and America and other things. It doesn't happen. America cannot do that. Americans will not allow it. Look, in America, the president is not the presidency. It's in this country that the president is his government, is the presidency, is Alpha and Omega, as Christian would say. It only had to happen in a dirty place again like Nigeria. Who would sell such a thing simply because I'm sure the government of Ijo had helped them in fighting the Yorubas? I'm ashamed, being an Hausa person, that they took that position. Yes, look at a senior magistrate like our grandfather and father, Aya Paul Abine. These guys took him for 8 months and they didn't tell him what he did till today. Injected him with diseases and left him. And they say they are a state of law. A magistrate who has served this country with honor. If there's a magistrate who doesn't have any skeleton in his cupboard as per his career in this country, one of those that will top the list is Aya Paul. Look at what they did to him. Yeah, everything is possible, but it's not possible with everyone. It's not possible with America, with UK, even with France. France are good in corrupting other countries, but France has one of the best democracies for French people. Yeah.
All right, we're going to take a look at what the newspapers reported this week, and when we come back, we will take a look at other reactions that have been streaming in concerning the All Anglophone General Conference convened by some religious and civil society leaders. The press review by Franklin Mwabi.
It is reported in The Voice that President Paul Biya might launch his campaign in the crisis-stricken Northwest regional capital, Bamenda. According to the paper, Wom in the Menchum division is steadily being overwhelmed by chaos as the Anglophone crisis deepens. Eyewitnesses narrate the massacre of youths by the military in what the Post-Weekender describes as BOYA summary executions. The Guardian Post reports that the death of one of the BOYA chiefs kidnapped recently sparked anger. Another issue of the daily newspaper highlights the reception of the freed BOYA chiefs by Territorial Administration Minister Paul Atanganji. In this issue of the Guardian Post, former Supreme Court Magistrate Aya Paul narrates how he survived assassination in BOYA while Anglophone women threaten sex strike over the crisis in the Northwest and Southwest regions. The Star reports the attack on the CDC's biggest banana estate by pro-independence fighters referred to as Ambers. In the same struggle for peace, the All-Anglophone Conference, codenamed TUMI Munzu Confab, is summarized in Eden newspaper as desperation for peace versus Anglophone extremists, legitimate concerns, and government's hard and defiant stance. The Sun offers its front page to forces for and against the AA in bitter exchanges. One of them strongly against the conference is BOYA Mayor Ekema Patrick Songe, who has reported in the Post said no all Anglophone conference in BOYA, even if the President Paul Biya authorizes it. And still concerning the AAC, another issue of The Voice asks whether the spokesperson of the conveners, Dr. Simon Mozu, tried to trick the church. That was all for the papers this week. More on what the papers will say next week on The Inside.
You're welcome back. That was the press review by Franklin Muabe ABDULKARIM Ali, Muslim scholar of the Christian Bible. One of the reactions that kept tongues waxing here and there, difficult to understand that kind of reaction, is that of the mayor of the BOYA municipality, Ekema Patrick Esunge, who said even if the President of the Republic validates this conference, it's not going to take place in a municipality. He is an Anglophone. How can we understand this kind of reaction?
That guy is penny-wise, pound-foolish. Ekema Patrick is on a mode in information technology we call self-destruct. He can explode anytime. And who set the bomb for him? He himself. That shows his disrespect for everyone and anyone. If you say you are a mayor to begin with, and people voted you to represent them, the first thing you do is that you stand against the people. And then Ekema cannot pretend. I am sure now, look, what stupid people do is that they close their mouth. Because when you open your mouth, you will sell yourself to the crowd. You confirm many things to people that you are actually stupid. He defiles his people. He defiles papal authority. He insulted Cardinal TUMI. He said a retired priest, he should look for somewhere in Douala or Banso and do that. Is nonsense. We don't want to hear it. You hear the voice of an absolute skeptic who doesn't know what he's talking about. And then he goes to even disrespect the person that always beat their drum for, His Excellency of the World, Pobia. He said even if it is he who accepted, he will not accept. This puts this man in a position only God can describe. And I like the response of Cardinal TUMI. And if we are going to have an AGC3, it's going to be right there in BOYA. This is what I'm telling, for example, Ekema. If we are going to have it, it's going to be nowhere else but right there in BOYA. He's got to understand that people put him there. He didn't find himself there. And this goes to show that it confirms the guy has lost almost everything. We are told today that the only certificate he's purported to have are his birth certificate and his communion card. And all these actions have come to confirm that truly the guy didn't go to school. People who go to school don't behave like Ekema would do. So even the communion card we heard he used it twice and it's even expired. So he's without anything. Ekema knows that he's lost everything. He's looking for people to go down with. Because I can't imagine somebody behaving like that. He doesn't even understand the constitution in which he works. Who the hell is a mayor in this country? Who the hell is, especially an Anglophone mayor? If BILAI spoke, we know that, okay, and they'll be totally behind him. This Ekemada will drop him on the streets like you carry a paper carefully up and then leave it to come down slowly. He doesn't have the legitimacy, he doesn't have the competence, he doesn't have the legal authority. He doesn't even have a moral, talk less of a religious authority. He has no authority. The guy is totally unthoughtful. If he says that, so if Biya says that he should hold, Ekema will say he should not hold.
Other reactions have been hitting hard on the Cardinal and the spokesperson, the spokesperson of the team organizing or convening the All Anglophone Conference, Simon Munzo. There have been reactions criticizing their presence in this kind of initiative, notably concerning Cardinal TUMI, looking at his rigid stance, his rigid statements against the Biya regime, against the government. How some people interpret this initiative like a conspiracy against the Yaoundé administration.
Against the Yaoundé administration instead?
Considering that the Cardinal has been very vocal against some of the policies of the Biya regime.
Yeah, but Monzo has not been very vocal, and with all respect due to Dr. Monzo, I respect him being a good historian in Southern Cameroon history, but he has double stands. We know the role he played, and we remember what he said in Bamenda in the second ASC in '94, and then we know his positions about this, and the Cardinal, I think, to me, also made a blunder choosing him as the spokesperson for this event, because he's had double stands. Unfortunately for him, he's not been consistent in his arguments and his actions, and most people think that it's because of his allegiance to the government that he got the position with the UN and stuff. So if I were the Cardinal, I wouldn't have chosen him as a spokesperson. I would have used the church totally. The church has good administrators to, for example, Reverend Tatambu is a mass communicator that could carry message from the church to the government.
Is that why even the pro-independence fighters are against him?
Yeah, most probably. Yeah, Dr. Monzo has had double stands. This is quite clear. I can't quote exactly what he said, but he was very clear in '94. I can't quote, but let me give you the essence of what he said. He said if the government doesn't want to consider federalism, then 100% in a few years we are going to take our independence. And then we are surprised what he's been doing and so on, especially since Southern Cameroonians killed.
But looking at his caliber, the caliber of the man, Simon Munzo, his experience on the national and the international scenes, and looking at his connection with the United Nations, are these not necessary ingredients to facilitate things?
Yeah, his portfolio is a good one if it was Cameroon going to talk somewhere else. I'm saying he could come in as a facilitator, but not as part of the organizing team, because there's already a bias. You know, if I enter into a religious debate with a Christian, I cannot pretend that I don't have a bias being a Muslim. So if you enter into such a thing, organizing such a thing, the Cardinal doesn't have a clear-cut bias. He's looking at God and people. The Reverend BILAI is looking at God and people. The Imams are looking at God and people. So that's why we would have preferred them to manage the organization. But you and I and people like Dr. Munzo would come in with third-party ideas that can corrupt the people of God. The people of God are but human. They are not angels or prophets that could not be corrupt.
Now, some people also think that the stance of the Cardinal against the Biya regime, we remember he even told President Paul Biya not to stand again, that he would have advised him not to stand again as a candidate. We know how he has been vocal on some ears in this country. Some look at this as something that is going to pull the legs of the organizers.
Well, the Cardinal had told Biya this. He said Biya is his junior brother. He was advising him that it's about time. Just like the ambassador of the United States told him that sit back, look at your legacy, hand this baton to another person and let's take a look at things from another angle. That was a simple advice. It wasn't with regards to the carnage, maiming, raping, killing, incarceration of Southern Cameroonians. What pushed the Cardinal to call for this meeting? The Cardinal did not call for AAC 102. What pushed him? He sees people dying by the day, and he doesn't see a clear-cut solution from the regime. And you notice that the Cardinal, in all fairness, said that he's going to invite the two governors who are both francophones but managing Southern Cameroonian regions. He's going to invite them to partake. This is unheard of. I'm surprised that the government is not even seeing that. Such a fair way to say, look, we don't want to hide behind and put some more fire. These are your eyes here. The governors are the chief executives of these regions. Let them come and watch what we are doing. Which Southern Cameroonians, like myself, would object, saying that it doesn't mean we cannot independently sit and talk about our stuffs. But you see, his intent and purposes is a good one to show that my all intention is to open way, crave way for a fair and all-inclusive dialogue towards solving the problem. And if this government cannot see this, trust me, if they lose this opportunity, this is a golden, they have lost many. If they lose this one from Cardinal TUMI, the imams and the presbytery, we pray for God to intervene. We pray for God. I fear for this country. If they lose this opportunity, if they don't hold this opportunity that these men of God have proposed, it's a big problem for them.
And the presence of the imams of the Bamenda and BOYA Central, most important and a significant push to this initiative.
The Cardinal is a very wise man. He recognizes the legitimate presence and longevity stay of Muslims in the world. You know, when the British, no, not even the British came late. When the Germans came to Bamenda, they found some people in a place called Old Town. The place was named Bandi then. These people were all dressed up because they could not pray until they are dressed. They are called Muslims. They found other people half naked, not that totally naked, Muslims that have been there. Think about it. We have Muslims here in Douala, where in Newbel, the center of Douala. We have Muslims in Yaoundé, where at the center, Brikiteri. We have Muslims in Bamenda, where at the center, Old Town. We have Muslims in Victoria, where at the center, Half Mile. These people have been there for long, and they constitute a very stronghold religious-wise. The Cardinal will not ignore them. He can't, because especially Muslims, you see, Muslims have not come out clearly to speak on a religious stance about this issue. Why? For many reasons. Muslims, when they come into a thing and they tell you, be careful, sit up or stand down. If you don't follow it, trust me, you're going to see the calamity. Secondly, we've not spoken. Why? Again, because if we speak in fairness and justice and something happens, they will link us to all the terrorists in the world. They'll start from Al-Qaeda, ISIL, and Boko Haram. So Muslims have been careful, but the importance of what Muslims can play in any peace building has been recognized by the Cardinal, and it's not a joke.
All right, we'll take interviews of the week, and when we come back, we'll make a global look. We'll take a global look at the way out of the crisis.
I say nothing can justify the acts of terrorism which are ongoing in certain parts of our country. And I want to tell you, Your Royal Highnesses, that Cameroonians have rejected violence. Cameroonians have rejected the call for secession. And in any case, they have no means. They cannot fight the state. The terrorists, they are just a small minority. They cannot fight the state. They have no means. They have no support, be it at the national or at the international level. The terrorists are isolated. And sooner or later, we will tell you that break time is over. President Paul Biya has given firm instructions to the forces of law and order to protect the civilian population. but at the same time to track down all the terrorists and the criminals and hand them over to the justice. Cameroon is a state of law. And I want to tell you that all those who have committed atrocities will have to pay for their crimes. And I'll also tell you that all those who are funding the terrorist activities in Cameroon, who are out of Cameroon, have been clearly identified. Very soon, another plane will go back and bring them to Cameroon as the plane that brought the 47 from Nigeria. There shall be no hiding place for the terrorists, inside or outside Cameroon. The terrorists are in an adventure which will not last for long. There is no future for them. The only future you have is the future inside the Republic of Cameroon under the leadership of President Paul Biya, who knows this country better than any of us. President Paul Biya has made enormous sacrifice for the past 2 years. He listened to the lawyers, he listened to the teachers, he listened to all the associations. He sent the Prime Minister, head of government, to go down and dialogue and discuss with Cameroonians. And when the Prime Minister, head of government, brought back the results, the President of the Republic took important decisions to solve most of the issues raised by the teachers and by the lawyers.
The chiefs are not only the representatives of your culture. The traditional rulers are at the same time the auxiliary of the administration. So when the chiefs are touched, the state is concerned.
I want to give special thanks to the mayor of BOYA, who is here in front of all of us. He is a patriotic Cameroonian. He is a model, he's an example. And in these challenging moments, we need courageous people like the mayor of BOYA. Otherwise, the terrorists will think that they are gaining grounds. They are not gaining grounds.
The idea has been in my mind for quite some time. I listened to intervention of the Anglophones. I arrived at the conclusion that we were not saying the same thing, and that they did not really know what their problems were. The problems were not clearly defined. So I thought that it would be good for the Anglophones to meet and define clearly and as objectively as possible what their grievances against the central administration are. I thought that the initiative the government was taking to dialogue with the people on the field by sending, some government officials to meet the people would help to reduce the tension. But I think all of us will agree that the tension is getting more and more serious, and that we cannot just sit down looking at what is happening. The government has authorized the meeting. We're still wondering whether the government will accept us to meet, which they will have to be there to protect us, to make sure that the meeting takes place calmly, and because it is our right, it is our duty as pastors.
We are doing our best. Should we be forced or to go alone, then we will do so, because we are a political party and we promise to our militants and to Cameroonians we have been working very hard for the past 5 years to reach that point that we'll go to election to win the election. That's why we did our homework seriously. I tried to meet with virtually all the leaders of opposition. Some were very open, and thanks God, probably we'll do something together. Others were maybe a little bit reluctant, but we are still in touch. That's why I say I will inform Cameroonians after the ELECAM has published or has released the list of the official candidates of the outcome of our meetings and contact with the other leaders of the opposition.
I am representing all the 19 other members of the delegation of PADEC, especially the national executive that has resigned. I think we have resigned from PADEC because the decision of the national president that he took on the 20th of July 2018 to support the candidacy of His Excellency Paul Biya for the 2018 presidential elections was not all that in norm with the democratic principles of our party. We want to say it was in total violation of the norms governing our party. And looking at the fact that before the elections were, after the elections were convened for the 7th of October, we had a meeting before the closing date of registration, which we asked him to present his candidature for the 2018 presidential elections, and he told us he was not really motivated. So that day we had a meeting. All at least 11 members of the national executive were there. 10 at most voted against supporting the candidature of Mr. Biya because we think that he's been in power for 35 good years, 36 years, and we've not seen any change in this country.
How can we conceive that people who has been our companion has finally, definitely changed and chose the camp of chaos, of war, of people who want to sell our country because of the petrol, because of our gold? This is nonsense. And personally, I feel guilty that maybe I have not taught them very well our ideology, the ideology of patriotism.
We took our time and studied the files of all the prospective candidates, and we saw that the only candidate that has experience to rule Cameroon at this time of crisis is Paul Biya.
For now, Paul Biya is the only person. He has the wisdom, he has the experience of leadership. We just decided to withdraw, that let the country not run into a mess with people who don't have the wisdom of leadership, who don't have the experience of leadership.
Pattern that never surrenders in front of a war. Our late brother and colleague attended the March 2018 ordinary parliamentary session despite his health situation and battling for a long period of time with this situation. In this session, just like many in the past, Honorable Igele was very productive in his Defense and Security Commission, as well as in parliamentary debates of the House Chamber. He was meticulous and had an eye for detail. What a great loss. Dear family members, we deeply share in your grief because of our departed prophet. He was a very dear person to us, not only because of the services that he rendered for our fatherland, but he was also a very gentle and serviceable personality and provided a very good working environment for all those who had the opportunity to cross his path in the glass house. He worked with passion, integrity, great energy. The National Assembly will indeed miss him highly, this very intelligent and vibrant individual. Dear mourners, our hearts are filled with deep sorrow in a moment like this, when our dear brother, colleague and friend has closed the door of life and departed from us so soon. Our lives will be empty and dark, especially in the areas where he brightened them. There is no doubt that his family had gone through a lot of difficulties to endure his sudden departure to the land of no return. Honorable Elias, fare you well, honorable colleague and brother, until we meet again to part no more. Rest in perfect peace. Good night.
Now, ABDULKARIM Ali, away from the All Anglophone General Conference, globally speaking, where is the door to move out of this impasse?
My dear, this thing has been asked times without number, and the same answers have come from almost every intellectual, from almost every international body, from almost every stupid person. The same answers have come. Look, when there is a multiple attestation of a fact or a point, you have to look carefully in it. There are simple ways out. That's according to me, the only way out. The way out the government is using, force, crackdown, is only going to foil some more. Release everyone that is in the jails because of this, so that the people's hearts and minds will be calm. Parents, brothers, even though some have died, but they will calm down in the first place. A grand general amnesty, so that people who call themselves Cameroonians can come into this country and go out when they want, without somebody standing there to tell them in French that allez-y, amenez-les, il faut le parti, to connaître qui je suis. You know, you need to demilitarize the zones. Your military is doing nothing but to foil it the more. Our government has to apologize. They have done a lot of wrong and they have not admitted one. Mr. Tanganji, who goes talking about, he said that there was no Anglophone problem. He's not come out to say, I am sorry. I didn't say it while I was thinking, I now realize that there's a problem. He's not said that. He keeps foiling it some more. The government is the commander-in-chief. He has given orders. We have to hamper on anyone who calls himself a terrorist. Define who is a terrorist. And then, of course, you need to sit, talk, and negotiate with the people of Southern Cameroon. This is the way out.
All right, we're going to wrap up this edition of the program with your title, Muslim Scholar of the Christian Bible. Who is a Muslim scholar of the Christian Bible?
Yeah, well,
we have two things there coming together.
It's called Muslim,
Islam, and Christianity.
Christian Bible. Yeah, this thing was acclaimed on myself, not actually by me, but by my Christian teachers. I happen to have a lot of mentors and professors abroad whom give me online classes, some of whom I've had the opportunity to sit before them and take my lessons. So this is the issue. I have some scholarship in Quranic studies, in terms of the history of the Quran, and of course the textual criticism, and then I'm a Muslim. But above all, I have a bigger scholarship with the Bible. I'm a scholar of the New Testament per se. Let me say a scholar because you're on TV, but I always like calling myself a student, given that knowledge is just but what you know. There's more to it, but I've had time to study the New Testament so deeply in the field called textual criticism and redaction criticism, and the history of the Bible and the church history itself. So not just the New Testament, the complete 73 books for the Roman Catholics and the 66. So people say he's a Muslim scholar of the Christian Bible.
No,
you're a Muslim?
You are a Muslim. Why do you study the Bible?
Oh yeah, sure. Christianity and Islam constitute the most important religions, if you ask me, in the world, and the biggest, of course. And I think that Muslims and Christians, if they marshal their efforts in good, there is a lot that they can handle. They can handle a lot of crises in the world, like poverty, like immorality, new atheism, disbelief in God is rising. Muslims and Christians together, in spite of their differences, can handle this. But above all, the Quran asks me to. How does the Quran tells me to do that? The Quran asks me to dialogue with the people of the book. The people of the book are the Jews and the Christians. The Jews' book is the Old Testament, the Christian book is the Old and the New Testament. To dialogue with them with facts and figures. How can you dialogue with somebody with facts and figures without reading his authority? Therefore, the Quran engages us and it tells us to recognize the teachings of Jesus, the teachings of Moses, the teachings of other prophets, and the Bible claims to have some of these teachings. So I now go into the Bible to see if the teachings of the Bible conforms with what the Quran say, and where do I draw my line and how do I understand this? The Quran asks us to respect Christians and talk to them with politeness. For example, in chapter 16 of the Quran, verse 125, we should call them into the way of God with reason, with beautiful talking. And then how do you engage in beautiful talking without knowing what the person is talking about?
That's all about tolerance.
Tolerance.
So that we can all live together in peace.
That's right.
Thanks so much, ABDULKARIM Ali, for coming. Thanks for joining us in this edition of the program.
It was my pleasure, and thanks for having me. We've said many things here, and I'm sure that I'm not misquoted anywhere. I'm responsible for my words and my words only.
Thanks. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. That's it for this edition of the program. Goodbye.